Okay. God. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Hi, my name is Tamia. I go by Silk Lips here and other platforms. I'll put my everything else below. As the title suggests, today I'm going to be talking about the war on information accessibility, the existent issue we have with sourcing, holding on to information, the tragic disappearance of our resources as we know it, and so on and so forth, and like things of that nature. Okay, for a lot of this, I'm going to be tying a lot of red strings together here. Ownership, privacy, archiving, internet-oriented law / policymaking, fashion law, open source technology, artificial intelligence, the crisis of misinformation, and everything like in between that, I guess. And yes, this is still a fashion channel, so I do want to bring a lot of what I'm talking about back to fashion, as it is the industry that I just know the most about. So a lot of earth-shattering news unloaded onto us in 2023 that I think is worth talking about in association with everything that I mentioned earlier. To start, lots of book bannings in the USA in particular. Since March of 2023, the Internet Archive has been in an ongoing legal debacle with Wiley, Hachette, HarperCollins, and Penguin Random House because they argued against the Internet Archive in court, asserting that their controlled digital lending practice, that is, only loaning out as many digital copies of a piece of media as the amount of physical copies that they have, was ruled not fair use. A lot of what the Internet Archive consists of are books that are no longer in print, and Hachette, Penguin Random House, and HarperCollins are considered to be three of the biggest publishers in the United States of America. Altogether, those five publishers own about 90% of the United States print book market, and Penguin Random House and HarperCollins own 50%. Together. On December 15th, 2023, not even a full 2 months ago, as of me filming this video, the Internet Archive filed for an appeal and have been rallying for support online. I personally use the Internet Archive a lot, both for what I do here and just to find books that I want to read. I used it a lot in university as well. If I couldn't afford a brand new textbook, it was usually I could find it there. There are a ton of fashion books that are out of print that are on the Internet Archive, and encyclopedias that you can access via the Internet Archive. There are books on pretty much everything on the Internet Archive. I don't know, I can't stress how important a resource this website is in being one of, if not the biggest, publicly accessible spaces online for scholarly information and out-of-print books. And it's all free and anybody can access it as long as a copy exists within this archive on the internet. And then something that's a bit sillier, but still worth mentioning. If you're on Twitter in July 2023, you might remember when Elon Musk decided it was a good idea to put rate limit on tweets. At first, it was something about extreme data scraping, and then people threw some ideas around, mostly thinking he didn't pay his hosting bills on time and that they were running low on borrowed time to fix the issue. You couldn't even see your own tweets without being told your access was limited. And then Elon began tweeting different rates at which you could view some tweets, with paid verification offering you more than twice that of a seasoned unverified account and quadruple that of an unverified new user. And considering he's been inundating us with ads, some speculated that this wasn't an accident and that this was a plot to continuously sink people deeper and deeper into the monetization of Twitter as it becomes a hell site, while others suggest that the rate limit issue was actually a sheer matter of incompetence and that he likely initially meant to solely prevent non-Twitter users from being able to access the website at length. Both the Twitter thing and the Internet Archive lawsuit are both symptoms of a greater problem. The hegemonic message that exists within our mainstream media is that free speech and access to information really only matter and belong for those in power and with money, as it speaks to who owns our ability to communicate at large. One thing's for sure is that, I don't know, I just feel like the journalism industry is winning. Y'all pray for me. A lot of journalism right now is just not that. Often it's lazy, sometimes it's propaganda, and we've gotten to the point where there have been various incidents recently, increasingly so, wherein a lot of media publications do not fact check information or report biased information that gets taken seriously and ultimately harms people. And then there's that lazy thing that happens a lot where a lot of publications will just copy articles from elsewhere on the internet that they believe will get them clicks, and then when the article turns out to be false or lacking context, there's never a similar level of eagerness held to be among the first to tell the truth, unless or as long as your executives and investors have anything to say about it. A lot of what I see from the outside when it comes to the job that is expected of journalists often is to get the most clicks and get ahead of their competition, the company that you work for. A lot of fashion journalism at the moment is just carefully constructed fluff pieces disguised as political or socially impactful while littered with affiliate links expecting you to buy things in association with the thing that you're reading. I'm not here to bully people for trying to do their jobs, but this is the worst. Low-key, we were better off when randoms were getting sent to New York Fashion Week by Karma because they were Tumblr famous. Like, let's go back to that. I personally think that misinformation in journalism is going to get worse if nothing else changes, especially with the amount of hardworking people I see being laid off left and right, so that this part of the owner class in control of the media industry can avoid paying wages to people, and thus also opening us up to a lot more misinformation in the future than we're already currently experiencing. This is exhausting. As of me filming this, alongside the myriad of media layoffs that we've been seeing, there have also been a large number of budget cuts that have been made to the print editions of various magazines. The fabric that makes up the way that we communicate is unraveling as media conglomerates move away from paying people properly and closer towards artificially produced sources for all of our information, requiring fewer brains and less wage labor. When you remove real people from the processes of art and writing and editing, especially with the ways that we now see the most hideous images you've ever seen in your entire life, entirely based upon scraped information from across the internet. In Canada, Bill C-18 was presented as an attempt by the government to have large-scale social media platforms like Google and Meta paperlink of Canadian news in our search results in support of the Canadian journalism industry. This has been met with crazy pushback, and the platforms are insisting that they will not be paying and have thus decided their retaliation would be to prevent all Canadians from accessing local, national, and international news on their platforms. All of this is very bad. We already have not very much choice with what we can see and cannot see on these platforms. And it doesn't feel like either side really cares about the people affected, as disturbing as all of this is. A lot of the more well-known instances of those misinformation scandals I mentioned earlier have been in political arenas of information dissemination. But I, as I've said, will soon reflect upon the ways we get dressed, purchase clothes, and navigate our individual identities through such deeply personal and also, yes, political processes. I say this because ultimately access to information is directly tied to how we are able to express ourselves and, moreover, the ways we're able to achieve, speak, process, and navigate within our environments. It should be no surprise that the online fashion community is heavily reliant on trust in both verbal and visual communication. We share information, images, and goods, etc. pretty much constantly. Capital is so heavily embedded in this, though, obviously because the sphere of the internet is largely centered around communal hosting, show and tell, etc. Let's give a pat on the back to the online fashion community.
Girl, you look like you've been numerous.
My grandma made it.
I love it. Grandma?
She makes all my clothes.
What's your grandma name?
Wanda Sue.
Wanda Sue! I love it. Oh, that is major.
I acknowledge the real backbone of this community as being the archivists in image, information, and garment who do the work to find the sources. I think it's fascinating that there are people who are so specifically interested in the work of different designers that they try to intertwine themselves in the literature by finding pamphlets and posters, VHS tapes, etc., etc. Any written information or visual information to supplement or add meaning straight from the creative director's mouth. While I have a lot of respect for archivists in this community, I also definitely understand that it's not without its controversies. Maybe you guys remember in 2022 when that vintage collector / sourcer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there were definitely some scamming allegations. There were definitely some scamming allegations that dropped around this time, allegedly. I'm not here to throw any shades, so I'm not naming names, but anyways. Sourcer and Collector posted an Anna Sui dress, I believe it was from fall/winter 1998. She purchased it off of Poshmark for less than $250. And then Anna Sui was like, wow, our atelier doesn't even have that sample. I would really, really appreciate it if you could pass that along to me for my archive. The collector posted the DMs on Twitter, and then there was a whole kerfuffle about it. I thought it was really funny that there were people in the replies of her tweets telling her to extort Anna Sui over a dress. It wasn't funny. It was just weird and bizarre and confusing. interesting and strange, and not so much controversy as it is concerning. Vogue Business published an article by writer Katie Chichorn who dissects the archive fashion aspect of the industry and its growth. A lot of brands have only recently started to archive their design history, both to preserve and maintain their brand narrative in a landscape where there's so much consumer interactivity with the industry, but also to reify the brand's existence over time. Some brands are reissuing archive pieces to bring about more interest via their consumers, as many of us shift towards valuing quality and duration in the things we wear. And of course, fashion is not immune to the nostalgia syndrome that we see across other industries like film and video games, etc. Just to make sure we all know what the definition of archival fashion is, according to Patricia Mears, who is the deputy director of the museum at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, archival fashion is an ornate garment primarily made for the catwalk, a design worn by an important star or that has received a tremendous amount of public attention, or a piece with some significance in a brand's history. So don't get it twisted, it's not archived just because it's old. Fashion in general, as an industry and an interest, is gatekept. Fashion distinctly relies on in-groups and out-groups. It's very much like the girls who get it, get it. What's important though is that inherently because of the internet, runway archives are replicated across platforms, expanding access against gatekeeping, which is a good thing. There are websites like First View, which is free, and Vocal Runway, which is owned by Condé Nast, and both of them hold and display runways and some show notes for free, giving access in different ways and with different permissions. But then regardless, you see these same images put to Tumblr and fashion Twitter, and to a slightly less organized extent, Pinterest, steadily shifting who knows about these images and clothes, as well as how they got that information. 35 years ago, you had to be at the show or wait until the news broke, and even then, access to images was not as easy. Access to the internet was not as easy. With the knowledge that old brands like Dior and Balenciaga only started archiving their designs in the 1980s, it's worth remembering that fashion history in theory within the realm of art is still quite young. And again, a lot of what we rely on for information is dependent on our fellow netizens. And realistically, whoever is privy to access and information aligned with what's being sought and decides that they want to go and share that. And blogs and forums are quite literally disappearing. A lot of subreddits were subject to blackout this past year, with many of them still closed as a form of protest against Reddit restricting access to their API and ultimately preventing non-users and third-party developers from accessing their site. And unfortunately, everything's an app now. Like, there's an app for everything, and like if you want access to something, oftentimes you're required to either sign up and give your information over or download an app and yes, again, give your information over. Because of the capital that's tied to it, I think that means that websites aren't being used in the ways that they used to. But what does this mean for archiving? What does this mean for information? Originally, the internet was supposed to be for the people. I would like to go back to how the internet even started and like how this turned into such a hellish, ad-driven, constant for profit landscape. I don't want to get like too into it just because you guys can look up a lot about the internet, but I will talk about what I think is relevant. Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web in 1989 with the expressed intent and drive of keeping its means of access open-ended, free, and non-proprietary. By 1993, CERN, or Le Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire, which was Tim Berners-Lee's place of employment at the time of the invention, it enabled the new technology to be royalty-free and thus available to the masses. In a 1999 Times article by Joshua Quintner, he speaks with Tim Berners-Lee and describes him as having always been interested in programs that dealt with information in a brain-like way, but that could improve upon its occasionally memory-constrained organ. So he devised a piece of software that he could, as he put it, keep track of all of the random associations one comes across in real life that brains are supposed to be so good at remembering, but sometimes mine wouldn't. The World Wide Web was, from the get-go, an infinite chasm of potential for free information that this guy wanted to help organize for any average person to use and have access to. Now, in the present, we're surrounded with ads left and right. Products are often taking up a lot of visual space when we scroll. A lot of the apps we use have some form of commerce tab attached. There's the recent advent of TikTok Shop, and I don't know if you guys remember when Instagram added their shopping tab, but that was like huge news at the time when they did. And both, I think, are just examples of how the expansion of the market across our social media platforms has become very rampant. And of course, I'm not too painfully unaware of any irony here. The compounded issue with capital's place online is the lack of transparency and the fact that people across platforms are putting out content for and gigs, which is then immediately monetized, not without, but beyond our consent. Nobody reads the terms and conditions because it's formatted super long and you don't technically have to. And I think both of those things are on purpose. Maybe that's a conspiracy, like don't quote me on that part, but I think it's true. In my opinion, allegedly. Data-driven surveillance and advertising rule the platforms we use now. The corporations behind this are conglomerates of wealth simply because we all use their digital infrastructural framework to amplify the things that we want to share and to stay in the loop with our loved ones, our colleagues, our friends, our peers, etc. It's a manipulative, oligopolistic system. Based on the timing that the World Wide Web was invented, I think the culprit is, of course, late-stage capitalism and neoliberalism that cemented itself over the web's original existent intent, despite any of our wishes, including the wishes of Tim Berners-Lee. In a 2017 article I'd gone over about this very topic, written by Mike Grimshaw, he outlines how neoliberalism and techno-feudalism have gripped the ways that we host and share information. The rise of self-publishing, blogging, and open access information has seen a claim and promotion of the Creative Commons. Yet even if content is freely available, contributing can be at a financial cost, and access is always determined by access to technology. As such, even the Creative Commons exists within various forms of experiences of capitalism: digital, industrial, post-industrial, neo-colonial resource extraction, and technological production and assemblage, the financialization of credit and debt to pay for technology, and so on. So digital society is capitalist society, and even so-called acts of resistance as Creative Commons are not separate from this. It is resistance within capitalism, not anti-capitalist space outside the wider capitalist frame. Internet has become indispensable, and with time we've been given very little choice about how we are able to use it and from whom we can hear from, which is why I called it an oligopolistic system built on manipulation and typical of capitalist infrastructure and its bad actors. What is viewed as indispensable is also monetized and made more inaccessible for the working class. So that's housing, food, water, healthcare, well-made clothes that last, and slowly but surely the internet. They would definitely sell us oxygen if they could. These are all resources that we need to live lives worth living, and they're scarily getting more and more scarce. Not to like be bad vibes or anything. In speaking about our rights as people and also our experiences as netizens, I really want to take a moment to talk about Aaron Schwarz. Rest in peace, King. Schwarz was a computer programmer, a hacktivist, and writer. He was one of the co-founders of Reddit, Demand Progress, and Open Library, which he'd actually started alongside Brewster Kahle, the creator of the Internet Archive. He helped create RSS when he was 14 years old, and he was also a key figure in the development of the Creative Commons. Aaron was an incredibly brave person. He felt it so necessary that people have access to information that he spent a good amount of effort leaking millions of Pacer and JSTOR documents for public access. This man was threatened with a 35-year prison sentence and a $1 million fine for making legal and scholarly information that was hidden behind paywalls accessible to the public. Being threatened with what would be the rest of his life in prison, as well as regular FBI surveillance on him, the interrogation and intimidation of his loved ones, and the tracking of his activity in black SUVs outside of his parents' home. The process of academic publishing is pretty exploitative, and it's very well described in the documentary about Aaron Schwarz. They describe it as a system built on volunteer labor, essentially, as megacorporations amass tons of money off of the backs of academic scholars doing empirical research on the world around us and beyond. I love Aaron's work a lot. I'm a very big fan of his Guerrilla Open Access Manifesto, which was a call to action for anyone who cares about information to share whatever you have access to. He stated that sharing isn't immoral, it's a moral imperative. Only those blinded by greed would refuse to let a friend make a copy. It's time to come into the light and, in the grand tradition of civil disobedience, declare our opposition to this private theft of public culture. We need to take information wherever it is stored, make our copies, and share them with the world. We need to take stuff that's out of copyright and add it to the archive. We need to buy secret databases and put it on the web. We need to download scientific journals and upload them to file sharing networks. We need to fight for guerrilla open access. Tim Berners-Lee actually gave a eulogy in tribute of Aaron to commemorate his life after they'd met when Aaron was just a child, and he'd considered Tim Berners-Lee to be a hero of his. So it's obvious that I think information should be considered a human right, and I also think that this concept is being encroached upon by big pub and big tech increasingly over time. I often hear the notion in recent years that nobody reads anymore. My gut told me that that phrase is something of a psyop, and I needed to look at the statistics to figure out what the truth is. Okay guys, I'm bad at math, so bear with me. I decided to compare book sales in the United States and Canada across the last 20-ish years. In a 2003 article documenting book sales in Canada between 2000 and 2001, the domestic sales for books in Canada sat around $1.8 billion. That was 7.6% up from 1998 to 1999, so that was just a couple years before then. It was 1.6 billion at that point. Fast forward, when we were in the first couple words of the C word, P word, I don't think I'm allowed to say those words on YouTube. According to Canadian Book Market, an annual report that details around 85% of the official sales of English language print books in Canada, book sales sat around 1.1 billion in 2022. At first glance, a $700 million drop is quite large, but also this is only a measurement of 85% of officially recorded sales reported as such by publishers. These numbers don't account for changes that might have occurred with the advent of smartphones and subsequently the advent of social media, with the existence of ebooks, libraries, e-libraries, independent publishing, PDF sharing, torrents, eBay, garage sales, those little take a book, leave a book libraries that you might see around town on sidewalks. There are probably even more variables as well that I can't immediately think of, but my point stands. And if you're still fixated on that near $1 billion drop, comparably, it's actually the opposite in the United States. Statista has a chart that demonstrates print book sales from 2004 to 2023, and print book purchasing and thus likely readership has gone up from 648 million in 2004 to 767 million in 2023, despite all of the aforementioned barriers. There, of course, have been highs and lows interspersed over that same period of time, but ultimately what we can see is that print media has not died, and there has been an increase in the US market at least. I think as well, it could be said that it's in a predictably similar space to what you could have thought 20 years ago. I mean, it's just not as profitable. The subscription business model taking over traditional means of art and media consumption has wrought a very sad present for information accessibility. But outside of magazines, there just isn't as much room for planned obsolescence with print media. There's only so much big pub and big tech can do when it comes to what you do with the book once it's in your possession. Once you've already read it and someone near you expresses interest and you want to share, once you learn something pivotal and reference it in a publicly accessible paper or YouTube video, once you've taken photos of it and shared excerpts on Instagram, I think there's something really transcendent about that. I don't know. I really doubt that nobody is reading. Maybe people are reading less, and I think that has a lot more to do with the fact that there are more ways to read and more things to do than there were even just 20 years ago. Reading is like water intake. You should get it straight from the source as much as you can, but if you're doing it in spurts here and there from the news to blogs that you might be interested in, that is also good, and that counts too. In my opinion, the supposed lack of profitability that print media should disappear sounds like something spread downstream from media execs to excuse the mass layoffs that have been happening over the last decade, and big publishers quickly shift to suggest that video is replacing the written word and that they'll get AI to write books for them in order to avoid paying wages. It's really, I really can't make this shit up. They're doing this to avoid spending money on the tangible and long lasting, and to ensure that you don't have access to that book, film, essay, song, etc. once you're no longer subscribed, or once they no longer have the right to the information they often did not produce and had no real hand in, and then the people who did the actual work get paid nothing while while the streaming platform makes the most money. I think a big part of my issue is that the complete transition to a centralized digital world is cheaper and more beneficial to big tech and big pub at the end of the day. It's more profitable for them to try to make money via copyright infringement lawsuits and trying to shut down libraries for giving people access to books the publications no longer want to publish than it is to simply continue publishing those books. In Canadian philosopher Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man, 1964, he notes that the electric light is pure information. It is a medium without a message, as it were, unless it is used to spell out some verbal ad or name. This fact, characteristic of all media, means that the content of any medium is always another medium. The content of writing is speech, just as the written word is the content of print, and print is the content of the telegraph. The message of any medium or technology is the change of scale or pace or pattern that it introduces into human affairs. It is the medium that shapes and controls the scale and form of human association and action. For it is not till the electric light is used to spell out some brand name that is noticed as a medium. Then it is not the light, but the content, or what is another medium, that is noticed. So super literally here, McLuhan insists that in us trying to understand what the greater purpose is of whatever the content, we have to understand what the greater purpose is of whatever that content exists within. He gives a similar example with the industrial invention of the railway, and that the railway did not introduce roads, transportation, the wheel, or even movement to humans, but rather that it signified the expansion of travel and human connection. To me, you could say the same about the internet. Its medium is its existence as the interactive information highway. In 1972, Felix Guattari and Gilles Deleuze wrote Anti-Oedipus, wherein they stipulate further, and in agreement with McLuhan's work, that writing has never been capitalism's thing. Capitalism is profoundly illiterate. The death of writing is like the death of God or the death of the Father. Thing was settled a long time ago, although the news of the event is slow to reach us, and there survives in us the memory of extinct signs with which we still write. Of course, capitalism has made and continues to make use of writing. Not only is writing adapted to money as the general equivalent, but the specific functions of money and capitalism went by way of writing and printing, and in some measure continue to do so. The fact nonetheless remains that writing typically plays the role of an archaism in capitalism, the Gutenberg press being the element that confers on the archaism a current function. So they think technology and capital only really tolerate writing and reading as relevant. They thought we were losing recipes in the 70s, and yet we're adamant still that capitalism plays a tremendous role in our perception of whether those recipes have value at all. Pretty plainly, I recognize it as reading and writing continue to remain pervasive in our current collective existence as a medium, despite how old it is, because it holds direct ties to how we handle, perceive, and control money. Like, have you ever noticed that cursive is rarely taught in schools anymore? And the only cursive you really need to know is your signature, as your signature exists as a codified way of making transactions with your name. This has been a bit of a tangent. This is all important in a material sense, whether it's 1972 or 2024, because now the dominant communication medium is one that we've all been told to regard as a cloud when it's actually materially rooted in underground cables and towers. It exists in real life and is susceptible to change on Earth, and at its core, as a medium created under capitalism, the internet is only as relevant as capitalism allows it to be. Under a state of climate change, the internet could just disappear. If the internet is the medium, then its inherent message is its power for sharing information and interconnectivity. In 2024, if printed books are the medium in question, then the inherent message feels more like a relic than just archaic, because of the fact that tech is omnipresent compared to 1972. The message of the printed book is its staying power despite its archaism, and arguably its existence alongside and in response to current technology. That is to say, what the hell are we gonna do when we, the people, lose access to physical media and digital copies are all that exist? What are we supposed to do when it's 10 streaming platforms owned by the same short list of investors investors passing around copyrights back and forth until, just like book publishers, they decide that no one cares because there's less money involved and they've already spent all of this money on AI. If I haven't already convinced you to start collecting physical media and to learn more about archiving, not only is good and valuable information, fact-check information, a lot harder to come across via the platforms we communicate on most often, that information is also disappearing from the internet. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I've raised red flags about this a few times as we witness genocides unfold on our phones while mainstream news outlets try to hide it and government entities try to lie to us about it and lie to us about our involvement in it. I've been increasingly scared of the effects of link rot as it might have an effect on our future directly. In the midst of numerous internet blackouts, people are risking their lives to document the ongoing atrocities around them, and a lot of the web links we had access to in 2012 don't exist anymore. The same is even more true for web links created before 2012. Information comes and stays at a price online, and the practice of storing information has hidden costs and requires upkeep. Not to mention, SEO for businesses taking prevalence in online searches makes it impossible to find old forums, blogs, and websites. I'm glad we're seeing major backlash in all of this though, between the general issue of misinformation getting more notice, and as well, I'm happy that first-person narratives and oral tradition are that girl again. Everything from true crime documentaries where you hear the victim or perpetrator speak for themselves to the Susie Pesto stories on TikTok. People overwhelmingly resonate with human feeling and effort, the thoughts and voice of a real person, and especially at a time when that choice seems to be increasingly threatened, and a lot of the things that we're being presented with are just like boring or ugly. The last philosopher I will be quoting today is Mark Fisher, who wrote in his novel Capitalism in 2009, "Blogs can generate new discourse networks that have no correlate in the social field outside cyberspace. As old media increasingly becomes subsumed into PR and the Consumer Report replaces the critical essay, some zones of cyberspace offer resistance to a critical compression that is elsewhere depressingly pervasive." Yeah, we need to take control of the narrative and like be organized about it. I think blogging is the past, present, and future. Okay, so positives and negatives for fashion, because like that was just like a lot about like information and tech. In the same vein that I view blogging being necessary for us to tell our own stories in the greater scheme of things, what would be great is Polyvore or something like it. I think it could help introduce a better ethos of crediting and digital archiving for fashion related things on the internet, as well as just like information in general. I say Polyvore specifically because I used to really love it, but also because I think it was the best community powered fashion website that we've had to date. I was also in my tweet era when I was on Polyvore. I imagine a new platform that collaborates the features of an archive like First View with the community orientedness of a forum and the added ability to edit like Wikipedia or upload pieces that you might have in your own wardrobe like Polyvore. It sounds like a dream to me. I mean, if there are any developers out there that want to work with me on this, let me know. And of course, there's so much that I could say about Polyvore, but maybe that's another video. Just like information I can posit. I will definitely put a bunch of like different archives that I like down below for the fashion girlies who love to look at pages. Yeah, fashion magazines still exist. Support print, and yeah, I'm really only scratching the surface. Go to your local bookstore or your local library and look. Remember when we were all up in arms about net neutrality? I think we need to do that again. The Reddit blackouts were the right thing to do. They had it, and online protests and organizing is very valid. We should be moving further towards that direction to keep access to information alive. Yeah, I'm just a girl, etc. or whatever. I don't have any plans on telling people what to do. I will say that if you do care about information, do what you can to save what you have and share it. Download and share as protests. Screenshot and send. If you have access to information behind a paywall, share it. And but don't call me. I'm just a girl, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just, in my opinion, allegedly. Let's help each other out, because I'm 1000% sure the investors in big pub and big tech and the governments that are in control of all of this do not care if we have access to accurate information, as evident through everything I've said in this video today. They really only care about upholding class structure and any rhetoric that helps line their pockets. The only real solution I can give is that we care for each other and ourselves. I think that's it. Bisous, bisous. Bye.